And so what I'd like to do today is to introduce you to a project that we've actually just completed. It's the Rick Steves Europe Through the Back Door reading environment. And this is a collaboration between Avalon Travel Books, who publishes the Rick Steves books, Firebrand, and Bluefire. And it's a collaboration where we've incorporated all the key components of a complete ecosystem. So the main objective of that ecosystem is to make a seamless experience as possible for the reader. So here's how it works. I wanted to break this down for you just into sort of 5 key areas that you need to consider, and then give you some considerations for each of those things. I hope everybody here is reading ebooks and digital books, so you are a consumer already, you are a reader already. So you probably know all these things, these components. You maybe just haven't thought about them as a tactician trying to break them down. So the 5 we're going to go through is discovery, purchasing, digital library, the reading experience, and then the relationship and the feedback. The more seamless these 5 components are, the better the experience the reader will have. And I want to repeat that. The more seamless these components are, the better the experience the reader has. This is why Amazon broke through the walls of ebooks 5 years ago, because they made their experience seamless. But it doesn't have to be just for the big guys. This is possible now for publishers of all sizes. So let's start with discovery. Discovery is essentially the path by which a reader is going to find your community website and ultimately find a book that they're interested in. So you can ask yourself some questions. As Micah was talking about brands, do you know what brands you currently have that might have communities built around them that you can leverage? Where will your reader first look for your ebooks? Are they just going to do a Google search? Are they going to get a newsletter from your community? Where are they going to first go? Are they going to go to your main site, your main community site? In the case of the Rick Steves app, we've incorporated a companion site to the main Rick Steves site. So Rick Steves' site is selling tours and luggage and videos and books and all sorts of things. But what we've done is we've built a companion site that's mobile friendly. We've also incorporated that with the Bluefire reading app. In fact, the website is not just mobile friendly, which is a pretty common term. It's mobile first, and that's a really important concept I want to talk about next. So the mobile first design the concept started with a gentleman named Luke Wroblewski. And what Luke was getting to was we're doing web design. We're very intent on building in features and thinking about desktop browsers and not thinking about mobile first. But as the transition to mobile devices is dramatically increasing, the other approach is to start with the mobile devices first, and that helps you get to the core essence of the mobile experience. The mobile experience and desktop experience, as it turns out. So in this case, we have a mobile-first design that's friendly on an iPad. It's friendly on the iPhone. As I said, I have this information down the bottom that's by Luke Wroblewski, so you can write that down, lukew.com. It's also friendly on the desktop, so just because it's designed for their mobile devices, it's also friendly on the desktop. In this case, it's friendly for an iPhone. You'll notice we have different navigation for the iPhone than we do for the iPad. The next question is, how do we integrate this with existing sites? Can you adapt an existing site? You're going to build a companion site. In the case of Rick Steves, you'll see that we have an existing Rick Steves site, so how do we tie into that? Can that do ebook fulfillment? Is it mobile friendly? And mobile first, even more important. So what we did is we built this companion site. So that's some of the considerations that you need to think about. And if you take one thing away about discovery, think about mobile first and do some research on mobile first. Next, let's talk a little bit about purchasing. And the key component for purchasing, especially on mobile devices, is to minimize clicks and minimize the interactions, make it as quick and easy as possible. To do that, the best way to do that is to have a relationship with that visitor. So they might start off as anonymous, but you want to have them as a registered user on your site. This also allows to tie into their digital library, which we'll talk a little about in a moment as well. By saving credit card information in a PCI compliant way, we're also able to quickly create transactions, especially when we're using unbundled content in a lot of small pieces. So there's some transaction costs that you need to think about too. In-app purchases, if you're on either an Apple and the iOS device, you obviously have to give Apple 30% if you're going to have in-app purchases. So that's an important consideration. Is that something you're willing to do? Will that drive that much more business? If you're on Android, there is no in-app purchase transaction costs, so you have more liberty there. You might have DRM transaction costs, whether it's Adobe DRM or social DRM, you might have transaction costs associated with that. And finally, merchant fees. You will have merchant fees to consider. Sometimes there's fixed fees in some of the merchant plans. You have to be careful of those fixed fees, especially when you get to unbundling content and you start selling pieces for 99 cents or start giving away content for free. So let's talk about the third thing, the digital library. The digital library really is that key component that we're all used to if we've been ebook readers for some time, where we're allowing the user to get at their content, the content that they've purchased, wherever they need it. So whether they're on a website and they want to download it to a reader on their desktop, if they're on a dedicated reader, like we've done with Rick Steves with the Bluefire reader, you want to be able to log in and see your content. So in this case, we have the library that's shown on the left. We have the libraries that's shown on the iPad, and on the right, and that's on the website, the rickstevesdigital.com website. And on the right, directly within the reader, the Bluefire reader, that's branded as a Rick Steves reader, we can see our library of books available there. So one click, we're downloading and we're reading. So the fourth component that we want to talk about is the reading experience. A dedicated reading app is not just about the brand, it really is about that cohesive and seamless reading experience. It's especially important in the case of Rick Steves, and here you can see the Bluefire app that's been branded with the Rick Steves brand. What's especially important for Rick Steves is he writes travel books, and he hopes you're off the grid, so you want to be able to take your content with you. So that experience allows you to be off the grid, disconnected, and yet still reading his travel guides. So here's an example of Rick Steves' London book within the Bluefire reader, and then on the iPad looking at a map. And then finally, I just want to talk quickly about the relationship. And there's a few things that you can look to get out of this relationship, this feedback, to make the complete cycle. The first is reading behavior. As Micah pointed out, how are your readers interacting with your content? And I think Micah said something very poignant the other day when we were speaking. Having a branded reading app and having a relationship with the reader is not only about elevating that brand, but it's about elevating and learning about your entire reader audience for all your books and all of your brands. So you're learning as you're building for one brand, you're learning for your whole publishing program. The second thing to consider is analytics. A lot of these analytics, we all know we go to our Google Analytics dashboard to see what our website's doing, but we can't do that for the major retail sites. We don't know how people are coming and how they're converting to purchasing books. When you have that direct relationship and you have that experience, then you can be learning from those analytics and how people are purchasing and finding your store. And finally, how are you communicating with your readers? And that's something that Susan's going to get into in a moment a little bit better than I could ever do. But also how, not only just communicating with, but how you effectively recommending content. So these are the major components of a complete cohesive reading experience.